Hey everyone, it's me again. Just checking in today. Going back to the headphone look. It's getting a bit stuffy today. I think here in Colorado it's 93 degrees, and it looks like there's some sort of air quality alert. There is every other day it seems like, but here we are. So going back to the headphones because I got my little fan on over here. I want to make sure you guys can hear me clearly. But we're going to continue with success through positive mental attitude. And we're going to go on to chapter 5, which is titled And Something More. It's ... and something more. And this has been alluded to in the past by Napoleon Hill as a chapter that's coming up. All right, and this chapter should be a little bit shorter than the last one. This one was, I think this one's 6 pages, so it's gonna be, we're gonna kind of fly through this one, hopefully. All right. Have you sincerely tried and still failed? Perhaps you failed because there was something more that was needed to bring you to the success you were seeking. Euclid's axiom says, the whole is equal to the sum of all of the parts and is greater than any of its parts. This can be rated, assimilated, and applied to every result or achievement. Conversely, any part is smaller than the whole. Therefore, it's important that you add all the necessary parts to complete the whole. A negative mental attitude is one of the primary causes of failure. You may be needlessly ignorant of facts, universal laws, and powers. You may know many of them, but fail to apply them to a specific need. You may not know how you can affect, use, control, or harmonize with powers known and unknown. When you seek success with PMA, you keep trying. You keep searching to find something more. Failure is experienced by those who, when they experience defeat, stop trying to find the something more. It's easy when you learn the something more and experience the know-how. Give a puzzle to a child and he may not solve it. If he keeps trying and learns how to solve it, he can then work it quickly. You aren't a child, but perhaps there are several life puzzles you would like to solve. You can solve them more easily with PMA. For example, there was once a songwriter who wrote a song but couldn't get it published. George M. Cohan bought it and added something more. The something more made George M. Cohan a fortune. He merely added 3 little words, hip hip hooray. Thomas Edison tried more than 10,000 experiments before he developed a successful incandescent lamp. But after each defeat, he kept searching for something more until he found what he was looking for. When the unknown became known to him, innumerable electric light bulbs could be manufactured. It was necessary only to apply the universal laws that had always existed, but which had not been previously recognized as applicable for the specific invention. There are many cures and preventatives for diseases, but at a given time they may be unknown. The medical preventative for polio was unknown until Dr. Jonas Edward Salk used principles of universal law that were previously not applied by the medical profession for the prevention of this dreaded disease. You may make $1 million by employing a success formula. If you lose your money, you can make another $1 million, and even more. That is, provided you know the formula and apply it. Success you didn't recognize the formula. Suppose you didn't recognize the formula that helped you make your first $1 million. You may fail in your second attempt because you deviate from the principles of success that are applicable. On your second attempt, you may need to make adjustments for changing conditions, but the principles will remain the same. Orville and Wilbur Wright succeeded in flying because they added something more. Many inventors came exceedingly close to inventing the airline before the Wright brothers. The Wright brothers used the same principles that were employed by the others, but they added something more. They created a new combination, so they succeeded where all others failed. Something more was rather simple. They attached movable flaps of a particular design to the edges of the wings so the pilot could control them and maintain the plane's equilibrium. These flaps were the forerunners of the modern aileron. Aileron? A-I-L-E-R-O-N. Whatever that is. You'll notice there's a common denominator to all these success stories. In each case, the secret ingredient was the application of a previously unapplied universal law. That made the difference. So if you are standing at the threshold of success without being able to pass over, try adding something more. It needn't be much. The words hip hip hooray were all it took to make a hit tune. Tiny flaps were all it took to make an airplane fly after others failed. It isn't necessarily the quantity of something more, but the inspired quality that counts. Why did the Supreme Court decide that Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone? Many persons claim to have invented the telephone before Alexander Graham Bell. Among those who held prior patents were Gray, Edison, Dolbear, McDonough, Van der Waide, and Reese. Philip Reese was the only one who apparently came close to success. The little difference that made the big difference was a single screw. Reese didn't know that if he had turned one screw 1/4 of a turn, he would have transformed interrupted current into continuous current. Then he would have been successful. In a United States Supreme Court case, the court noted that Reese knew what had to be done in order to transmit speech by electricity is very apparent. For in his first paper, he said, "As soon as it is possible to produce, anywhere and in any manner, vibrations whose curves shall be the same as those of any given tone or combination of tones, we shall receive the same impression as that tone or combination of tones would have produced on us." The court further noted, Reese discovered how to produce musical tones, but he did no more. He could sing through his apparatus, but he could not talk. From the beginning to the end, he had conceded this. As in the case of the Wright brothers, the something more Bell added was comparatively simple. He switched from an intermittent to a continuous current, the only type capable of producing human speech. The two currents are exactly the same direct current. Intermittent means breaking with a slight pause. Specifically, Bell kept the circuit open instead of breaking the circuit intermittently as Reese had done. The court concluded, Reese never thought of it, and he failed to transmit speech telegraphically. Bell did, and he succeeded. Under such circumstances, it is impossible to hold that what Reese did was an anticipation of the discovery of Bell. To follow Reese is to fail, but to follow Bell is to succeed. The difference between the two is just the difference between failure and success. If Reese had kept on, he might have found out the way to succeed, but he stopped and failed. Bell took up his work and carried it on to a successful result. His silent senior partner inspired him to success. R.G. Letourneau, builder of heavy earth-moving equipment, motivated thousands of persons with his inspirational speeches. In these talks, he referred reverently to my senior partner. He told about the inspiration and help he received from the partner. Letourneau had little formal education, but he performed feats of engineering that are astounding. As a subcontractor on the Great Hoover Dam in Nevada, Letourneau lost a fortune because he ran into an unexpected strata of rock. The cost of drilling through the rock was more than he had calculated in estimating his contract, so he went broke trying to fulfill his end of the bargain. But instead of brooding over his loss, Letourneau turned to prayer. How did he pray? By expressing gratitude, profound gratitude, for what he had left. A sound body, a strong pair of hands, a brain that could think, and something more. In my hour of greatest distress, said Letourneau, I found my greatest asset in the revelation and discovery of a silent senior partner. I have since recognized this partner in my personal and business life. Everything I have done that has been worthwhile, I owe to him. Napoleon Hill was associated with Mr. Letourneau for 18 months and had an opportunity to observe him closely. By this time, Letourneau had become a well-known inspirational lecturer. He devoted much of his time to traveling around the country in his private plane, preaching his message, "It's wonderful to be in partnership with God." One night, when the two men were flying home from a speaking engagement in North Carolina, something interesting happened. Soon after his pilot took off, Mr. Letourneau went to sleep. In about 30 minutes, Napoleon Hill saw him take a little notebook from his pocket and write several lines in it. After the plane landed, Napoleon Hill asked Mr. Letourneau if he had remembered writing in his notebook. "Why, no," exclaimed Letourneau. He immediately pulled the notebook from his pocket and looked at it. He said, "Here it is. I've been looking for this for several months. Here's the answer to a problem that has kept me from completing a machine we are working on." When you receive a flash of inspiration, write it down. This may be the something more that you're looking for. We believe that communication with infinite intelligence is through the subconscious mind. We believe you should establish the habit of immediately writing down flashes of inspiration as they are communicated to you from the subconscious to the conscious. Albert Einstein developed intricate and profound theories regarding the universe and the natural laws that control it. Yet he used only the simplest but most important of instruments ever invented, a pencil and a piece of paper. He wrote down his questions and answers. You will develop your mental powers when you learn and develop the habit of asking yourself questions. When you learn and develop the habit of using pencil and paper to write down your questions, ideas, and answers. It is unlikely that Einstein and other scientists would have come to their successful conclusions unless they had learned from the recorded knowledge of mathematicians and scientists who preceded them. It is also unlikely that Einstein would have tried unless he had been motivated to search for universal principles after having developed the habit of engaging in thinking, time, and action. Do you know of any great thinker or person of achievement who does not make notes of ideas that occurred to him? Your Creative Power and Applied Imagination by Alex F. Osborne of the advertising firm of Batten, Barton, Durston, and Osborne have inspired hundreds of thousands of persons to engage in creative thinking. What is equally important, these people have been motivated to positive constructive action. Thinking is not creative unless it is followed through with action. Osborne, like so many creative thinkers, used a notepad and a pencil as favorite working tools. When an idea occurred, he jotted it down. He, like other great men of accomplishment, engaged in thinking, planning, and study time. Alex Osborne stated an obvious truth when he said, "Everyone has some creative ability, but most people haven't learned to use it." Osborne's brainstorming methods, explained in his easily read textbook, Applied Imagination, are being employed in college classrooms, factories, business offices, churches, clubs, and in the home. Brainstorming, as developed by Osborne, is a very simple method whereby two or more persons use their collective imaginations to come up with ideas that flash from their subconscious to their conscious minds, in answer to a question incorporating a specific problem. The ideas are written down just as fast as they strike the minds of the participants. No critical judgment is permitted until after many ideas are written down. Later, the ideas are screened and judged to determine their practicality and value. LaSalle College in Philadelphia and many universities throughout the country teach well-rounded courses in creative thinking, which include the methods used by creative thinkers in many phases of business and industry. It was just such creative thinking that enabled Dr. Elmer Gates to make this world a better place in which to live. Dr. Gates was a great American teacher, philosopher, psychologist, scientist, and inventor. During his lifetime, he developed hundreds of inventions and discoveries in the various arts and sciences. He did his creative thinking by sitting for ideas. Dr. Gates' own life proved that his methods of brain and body building could develop a healthy body and increase the efficiency of the mind. Napoleon Hill recalls how, armed with a letter of introduction from Andrew Carnegie, he went to visit Dr. Gates at his Chevy Chase laboratory. When Napoleon Hill arrived, Dr. Gates' secretary told him, "I'm sorry, but I'm not permitted to disturb Dr. Gates at this time." "How long do you think it will be before I can see him?" Napoleon asked. "I don't know, but it might take as long as 3 hours," she responded. "Do you mind telling me why you are unable to disturb him?" She hesitated and then responded, "He is sitting for ideas." Napoleon Hill smiled. "What does that mean, sitting for ideas?" She returned the smile and said, "Maybe we'd better let Dr. Gates explain. I really don't know how long it will take, but you're welcome to wait. If you prefer to come again, I'll see if I can make a definite appointment for you." Mr. Hill decided to wait. It was a valuable decision. What he learned was well worth waiting for. This is how Napoleon Hill tells what happened. When Dr. Gates finally came into the room and his secretary introduced us, I jokingly told him what his secretary had said. After he read the letter of introduction from Andrew Carnegie, he responded pleasantly, "Would you be interested in seeing where I sit for ideas and how I go about it?" He led me to a small soundproof room. The only furniture in the room consisted of a plain table and chair. On the table were pads of paper, several pencils, and a push button to turn the lights on and off. In our interview, Dr. Gates explained that when he was unable to obtain an answer to a problem, he went into the room, closed the door, sat down, turned off the lights, and engaged in deep concentration. He applied the success principles of controlled attention, asking his subconscious mind to give him an answer to a specific problem. Whatever it might be, on some occasions, ideas didn't seem to come through. At other times, they would immediately flow into his mind. And in some instances, he would take as long as 2 hours before they made an appearance. As soon as ideas began to crystallize, he would return on the lights and begin to write. Dr. Elmer Gates refined and perfected more than 200 patents which other inventors had undertaken but had fallen just short of success. He was able to add the missing ingredients, the something more. His method was to begin by examining the application for the patent and its drawings until he found its weaknesses, the something more that was lacking. He would bring a copy of the patent application and drawings into the room. While sitting for ideas, he would concentrate on finding the solution to a specific problem. When Napoleon Hill asked Dr. Gates to explain the source of his results while sitting for ideas, he gave the following explanation. The sources of all ideas are knowledge stored in the subconscious mind and acquired through individual experience, observation, and education, knowledge accumulated by others through the same media, which may be communicated by telepathy, and 3, the great universal storehouse of infinite intelligence wherein is stored all knowledge and all facts, and which may be contacted through the subconscious section of the mind. When I sit for ideas, I may tune in to one or all of these sources. If other sources of ideas are available, I do not know what they are. When I sit for ideas, I just read that. Dr. Elmer Gates found the time to concentrate and think in search for something more. He knew specifically what he was looking for, and he followed through with positive action. In Chapter 7, we will discuss how you can learn to see so that your search for something more will be made easier. In your search, you may fail. But in failing, you may succeed in discovering something even greater. Ask yourself, why? Be observant. Think. Get into action. The Bible, and both a good, comprehensive dictionary and an encyclopedia should, we believe, be in every home. They also can help your search for something more. You don't need to be ashamed to be a failure like Christopher Columbus. Look in your Encyclopedia Britannica and you will find the thrilling, exciting story of Christopher Columbus. He studied astronomy, geometry, and cosmography at the University of Pavia. The Book of Marco Polo, theories of geographers, reports and traditions of mariners, as well as floating works of art and craftsmanship of non-European origin cast up by the sea, all of these stimulated his imagination. Step by step, over the years, he came to the firm belief, through inductive reasoning, that the world was a sphere. Having reached this conclusion, he was convinced through deductive reasoning that the Asiatic continent could be reached by sailing westward from Spain, just as well as Marco Polo had reached it by traveling east. He developed a burning desire to prove his theory. He sought the necessary financial backing, ships, and men to explore the unknown and to find something more. He got into action. He kept his mind on his objective. Over a period of 10 years, he was often on the verge of receiving the necessary help. But the deception of a king, the ridicule, the suspicion and fear of subordinate government officials, the disbelief of those who wanted to help him, but who at the last moment refused because of the skepticism of their scientific advisors, all brought defeat after defeat. He kept trying. In 1492, he received the help for which he had so persistently searched and prayed. In August of that year, he sailed westward for India, China, and Japan. He was on the right course and headed in the right direction. You know the story. After he landed on the islands in the Caribbean, he returned to Spain with gold, cotton, parrots, curious arms, mysterious plants, unknown birds and beasts, and several natives. He thought he had achieved his objective and reached the islands off India. He had failed. He had not reached Asia, but without being aware of it immediately, Columbus had found something more. Quite a bit more. You, like Christopher Columbus, may fail to reach your high major objectives, or your magnificent obsessions. You, like him, may fail in your efforts to reach a distant destination in the realm of the unknown. But you may discover something more, something equaling the wealth of the Americas. You, like him, may inspire and direct those who follow you to head in the right direction, on the right course, and continue further into the unknown until they achieve the worthwhile objectives you conceived. You, like Columbus, have the time and the power to think. You, like him, can persistently strive with a positive mental attitude to achieve your definite major aims and find something more. You don't need to be ashamed to be a failure like Christopher Columbus. By now you should be in a position to extract principles from specific illustrations so that you can relate, assimilate, and use them. We agree with Admiral H.G. Rickover in the fundamental truths of his statement. Among the young engineers we interview, we find few who have received thorough training in engineering fundamentals or principles, but most have absorbed quantities of facts, much easier to learn than principles, but of little use without application of principles. Once a principle has been acquired, it becomes a part of one and is never lost. It can become to novel problems and does not become obsolete, as do all facts in a changing society. Learn the principles, apply them. If you're not making satisfactory progress toward achieving your aims, look for the something more. It may be known or unknown, but you'll find it if you take the necessary time to study, think, plan, and search for it. Now, this chapter would not be complete without reference to cosmic habit force. Use cosmic habit force is one of the 17 success principles, and the concept of cosmic habit force is easy to understand, for it is a name that we have given to applied power of any natural or universal principle or law, known or unknown. Cosmic habit force can be simply defined as the use of universal law, whether it is known or unknown to you. As an example, it's easy to understand that when an object falls to the ground, the law of gravity is being applied. And therefore, if you want an object to fall from a given height, you use comet habit or force. And in this particular instance, the law of gravity, But the law of gravity, or any other law, is not in itself a power. Yet when you properly use the principle, then power is employed according to the universal law. And thus, the breaking of the atom, every invention, every chemical formula, every psychic phenomena, every individual action and reaction, be it physical, mental, or spiritual, is the result of the use of natural law. For every result, there is a cause, and the result is brought about through the use of cosmic habit force. Again, man is a mind with a body, and he can think. It is through thinking that he learns how to use cosmic habit force, and his thinking can bring the thoughts he thinks into reality. This concept is not difficult to comprehend, for in 1900, Albert Einstein gave to the world his now famous formula, E equals mc squared. This formula explains the relationship between energy and matter. When matter approaches the speed of light, we call it energy, and as the velocity shows down to zero, it remains matter. In the formula, E is energy, M is mass or matter, and C represents the velocity of light. And thus we see that Einstein's formula is a word symbol of one of the laws of cosmic habit force. And by understanding and applying this formula, man has been able to turn matter into energy and energy into matter, and to use the atomic power for constructive purposes such as to light an entire city, to power ships, or even for such everyday affairs as to develop heat for cooking. And something more. We can now see that because matter and energy are the same thing, everything in the universe is related. Now, you've got a problem? That's good. And you'll learn in the next chapter how to adapt many of the lessons learned in this chapter to your own life. And then you will be able to successfully meet the problems created by the universal law of change, which, like all natural law, is the result of cosmic habit force. Okay, so, alright, I got about 10 minutes. 10 minutes to talk about what I want to talk about, so let's see if I can do it. Okay, so, some good things about this chapter, which, again, I think really bring out points that aren't. Napoleon Hill is coming at this from obviously a business mind, right? He is the big focus is success and wealth, right? And I think a lot of good things in this chapter, particularly, are stemming around the focus on creating or being able to positively and continuously evaluate the success or lack of success you've had so far, right? Being able to look at a mistake and say, okay, this didn't work. Why? Why did this not work, right? And going in and seeing, what it is that is the weakness, right? And in order to apply this to, applying this to mental health is actually really simple. What comes to mind for me is simply that, when you are trying to affect change in your mental health, right? Say you've got anxiety, right? You struggle with the racing thoughts and anxiety attacks or whatever. Like you've got your run-of-the-mill like anxiety symptoms going on. What we do in therapy is we say, okay, what is happening right now, or what is your experience so far, and what have you tried? What are the things that you've attempted to do to fix the problem? And then the next question is, how did they work? Are they helping you? And if not, what do you notice is happening? Like, is it no change? Is it making it worse? And then again, I kind of circle back usually and say like, okay, so let's talk about the things that are helping. What do you notice? And that is that scientific method version or way of evaluating, just kind of like assessing a patent, right? Why isn't this product working? What is the disorder, and what is causing it? And why are the solutions that we're coming up with not working, right? So it's a very easy, like I said, it's a very easy connection to mental health because it is pretty much what happens in therapy, right? And I will say, like, therapy sessions, at least from what I've seen, the majority of therapists, employ this sort of an approach, but largely it's just a conversation like this, right? It's almost as if we're sitting for ideas, right? Just spending an hour and saying, okay, like, tell me about this last week that you had. What were your triggers? What were the things that influenced what you're feeling? Okay, how long did it last? And were you ever able to bring yourself back? And when you did, what happened? Like, it's a very analytical kind of thinking, which again is where, as I mentioned in the last video, it's where that belief, that hope that we have, where that comes from, right? Because we know as therapists, there is a way around everything, right? There are coping skills for anxiety as there are coping skills for depression. When it comes to substance abuse, I spent my first year as a therapist in the substance abuse world. And lots of times it was, okay, what is happening in your environment? What is this background that you're in that is making it difficult for you to affect that change, right? And oftentimes, you know, it feels like a big thing, but it's a small change. It's kind of one of the things that's pointed out here. Oftentimes, the biggest changes that have been made in history were taking something that already existed and making incremental changes until the right product, the right patent, the right thing has been found, right? The right pathway to go down, the right a light bulb that works, a plane that flies, it always definitely 100% comparable to mental health, right? So, and it's a conversation I've had with a number of clients, in my years as a therapist, just saying, hey, like, we're going to give this coping skill a shot, right? It may work, it may not work, and that's okay. Because every person is different. Every person has something that they're bringing to their life that other people are not. Because everyone's life is different in exponential ways, right? Such that I may have had the same upbringing as one of my siblings, right? But we also have our own individual experiences of that. We have our own perceptions of that. We have our own worldview, and so even if me and that sibling have the same mental illness, for example, our coping skills are going to be different, right? And I believe I've mentioned this before in an early video too. The coping skills that work for you are going to be based on, like I said, relationships you've come to or relationships you've had along the way, your worldview, the upbringing you've had, whether you're an extrovert or an introvert. It's going to be different, almost always. And because of that, like I said, the approach that we take as therapists is just to figure out what is happening. We're trying to figure out what is going to work for you, right? So if meditation works for me, it may also work for you, or it may not. And that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you or that I have an advantage. It is simply that we are learning what kind of a person you are and what your needs are and how your brain works and how your mental health is affecting you, right? And I think, again, that's one of the big takeaways from this chapter that I want there to be, because I think that Napoleon Hill does give a lot of credence to that. He gives a lot of insight into, it's not, sometimes a big change can be necessary, but the majority of the time it is something small. It is, hey, when you come home from work today, just sit in your, in a room by yourself for 30 minutes instead of going straight into what you normally do. Go and spend 10 minutes just gathering your thoughts, right? In regards to, say, like work-life balance, for example, or hey, like, you're doing meditation and it's not working. Maybe this time do meditation, but pick one that's guided. Or if you're doing one that's guided, pick a different one. Pick something that's got a different focus, so little incremental changes, right? In terms of sleep hygiene, right? Hey, tonight, turn your phone off a little bit earlier, right? Put your phone down, and go to bed maybe 10 minutes prior, right? Nothing big, right? If you're changing your sleep schedule, it's often, better to work incrementally, right? Because if you're trying to go to bed a whole hour earlier than normal, you're just going to lay there awake, right? So point being, even in mental health, it works the same way, right? The smallest changes can be the most influential, the most impactful. Having said that, I think that's about all I got for this chapter today. If you guys think of anything that you want to point out, or that you want me to expound on, please comment, add some sort of a comment somewhere, or email me or whatever. Like I said, just let me know, and I'd be happy to kind of give more feedback on that or more insight. And with that, I think I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you again for listening to this video. Hopefully it was insightful for you, or informative. But with that, I'm going to let you guys go, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.